Hello and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha.
I'm Dan.
I'm Jared.
Steve.
And I'm Chris.
And this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. Today we're going to be discussing pages approximately 101 to 200 of Redshirts. It's chapters 10 to 21. The book is by John Scalzi. And the short story for today is The Snowball Effect by Katherine McLean. We are working our way through the big book of science fiction for the short stories. The short story for next week is Prot by Margaret St. Clair, and we will be finishing up Redshirts next week. And since we're changing books, heads up that we are also going to be going back to Children of Time, the series with Children of Memory, for the week after that. We haven't decided how much of that for the first discussion, but probably around 100 pages. With that, what did everyone think of chapters 10 through 21 of Redshirts, where apparently all it takes to travel in time is point a shuttle at a black hole?
With the right personnel.
Yes.
With the right person, yes. It is a bit of sociology and science.
Yes.
One thing I liked about, because one of the things we were discussing last time was like, oh, what are we going to do with this premise, right?
Mhm.
Like, we weren't sure what could be after. And I guess what comes after is, they go back in time, so we have a bit of space travel and a bit of parallel dimension sort of thing. But one thing I really liked about them going back in time to, what is it, San Francisco? Los Angeles? San Francisco? Yeah. It's like the callback to all those like classic low budget sci-fi movies from whatever the 70s, whatever, that they all film in San Francisco because it's cheap, everyone is there already, so they always have a time travel episode going back. So it's another like very meta sort of thing that they're doing, and I appreciate those jokes.
It continues to be very, very meta going forward. So, because it even tells you, right, we're going back to 2010, so the reader, watcher, whatever, can really identify with the time and space and the events that are going to happen here. So it's like, we'll just bring you back here as well. We'll stick you outside our nightclub. We can do all these cool things with the characters in the bar, like meeting Finn in the bar and with the actors, all that kind of stuff. Even with Gawker and stuff been in there. It still does surprise me, though, that this was an award-winning novel. This is the most unserious. I mean, you often have to check yourself that this is like super sci-fi nerdy dumb in so many ways. I'm really, really enjoying it. There's no doubt about that, but it is not to be taken as hard sci-fi in any shape or manner. In fact, it often makes fun of exactly those points.
Yeah, it's not serious, but it's like, I enjoy how it feels clever to me how he uses the unserious premise to make it interesting. Someone might disagree if it's interesting or not, but an interesting story, I guess. Because we were saying last time, like, where is it going to go from here? Because that's what the premise was already done. Like, the joke was, we already had the joke, right?
Yeah. There's a point, I think, where it switches kind of from a parody of science fiction to a parody of how Hollywood works and how creating television works, and it turns it into a kind of a commentary on basically what it seems like was probably part of his career, being a writer on a TV show, and just all the wacky stuff they had to think up, episode after episode, 24 episodes a year. You got to think up a lot of wacky stuff because it's probably a crunch, and it's probably there's always budget constraints, time constraints, all these constraints on a show trying to put out that much stuff every year. And so of course you're going to run into wacky stuff, and he kind of comments it's kind of a commentary on that. And the time travel thing, of course, is the most wacky trope in sci-fi television there is. It happens in almost any sci-fi television show that doesn't take itself too seriously. The time travel thing comes up sometime or another, and it's always done pretty, tongue in cheek, and just he's playing with that, and it's fun.
Hand babies, sci-fi time travel.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, I agree with Dan that I thought this section was particularly clever. It feels like a very meta exploration of things like it's probably intended things like maybe free will, just because these guys, they were what Finn does his best to get Duvall to not go because he's certain that she's the one who's going to die, but it turns out that it's his episode to die and he dies. So it's like whatever control they think they have and they feel, they actually don't have that. And yeah, I think that was clear already from the fact that they none of them behaved in the manner they expected to in the beginning, but just in and of itself, things like free will and prophecy and whatnot that keep coming up in speculative stories, it does feel like an interesting way to explore those concepts as well. And yeah, so the first part of what we read this time, I think that was very clever in what it did. And the second part was very amusing because every second person they ran into was someone who they had seen on the set. And I feel like we could see it a mile away that when the producer, it turned out he had a son in coma. It's like, okay, he's going to be someone they know and they're going to try and heal him. But it still worked, like for even, and I think it was maybe intentionally predictable that way, but it worked. It was still funny and got all the laughs. And
Go for it, Steve.
Wait.
When did I become the negative Nancy and like the wet blanket? When did that happen? Okay, so I'm not a big Star Trek fan. I've seen maybe just a handful of episodes of Star Trek. It's not, I don't dislike it. It's just not really something that I really care about. So this book, okay, I'm gonna try and I'm not a fan.
What you think?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I was bored out of my mind. If we weren't reading it for the group, I'd DNF it. The characters all seem the same to me. Like they all seem like they're the same person. And I'm wondering if this is because of the audiobook, because the voice doesn't change through the different characters. I think Varsha, you're listening to the audiobook too. There's no differentiation between the different characters. Maybe that's why, but
yeah, I do think Will Wheaton doesn't change voices, and everybody does feel the same in his narration, in my opinion. But yeah, I switched back from the audiobook to reading physically because of that. Yeah. But go
But
ahead,
it was
Steve,
on
sorry.
purpose because they were all supposed to be kind of extras.
Yeah.
I thought. Anyways,
so the I'm not a fan of when things go meta like this. And there's a very very popular series that I just DNF'd because I couldn't do it. I don't want to say what series in case someone hasn't read it. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of everything they're doing. I think it's clever. It has its moments where it's funny, and I can see why people enjoy it. It's not me. It's not for me. But it's not bad. It's clever. It's funny. It's flippant. It's it's fun. I guess I'm just anti-fun. Is what it comes down to.
No, I think you make a couple of good points, Steve. I'm not doing the audiobook, and I still feel like the characters sound way too much like each other half the time. Just reading it, you have to actually go out of my way to give voices to each character who's talking, so we can. And it's sometimes I lose track of the characters as they're going back and forth, and it doesn't seem to actually matter that I lose track of them. So whether it's done on purpose or not, because they're supposed to be extras on a show. I feel like we should have kind of gone beyond that point by this time, and had some, because they're actually trying to gain individuality. That's part of their quest here, to be important, to be individuals beyond the extra status in a show. And so I think it would be important for them to gain some individuality, and maybe we'll see that in the last third of the book. I mean, we see it with Dahl, definitely. He definitely stands out compared to the other ones, but and like Kerensky and stuff, but the other ones, yeah, they have their individual stories that they run into their doppelgangers or whatever when they go back in the past. But they, in dialogue with each other, they still seem very similar, and I'm hoping that I don't know, maybe that's going to stick that way throughout the rest of the book, and maybe not. We'll see how it plays out.
They all have the same sense of humor.
Yes, John Scalzi's sense of humor.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of, and I'm sure it's probably intentional. So yeah, I think that's another thing.
Yeah.
They all seem very similar, but there may be the extras thing, and they're looking for individuality, and maybe maybe they'll all be miserable at the end, like I am.
See, I thought that's where they were actually going to go with it at one stage. I thought they were going to give themselves more backstory within the concept of the spaceship, like Duval would end up being pregnant, so you couldn't kill her because she was going to have Kerensky's baby and stuff, that kind of. I thought that's where they were going to go with it, but obviously they didn't. I think it's interesting when I compare this to something like, not everybody has seen Star Trek, but something that was sort of like homage in a different way is the Orville. If anybody's seen the Orville, the Seth MacFarlane show, so it does it in a very different way, because it does exactly what you're saying there, Steve. In that it takes Star Trek as a pastiche and kind of puts characters on it, so it creates these kind of like comedy archetypes and relationships. So the first mate and the captain used to be married, and now they're kind of put together and stuff to create this sort of comedic, sometimes conflicty drama, and not too serious. And in some ways, it sort of doesn't work again because it veers too much on that side. So I think it's one of those strange things. I sort of don't care about whether we get to know the characters other than they survive at the end. I think it's one of those classic Star Trek fallacies of you just want everybody to get home safe, and then they'll be okay. But it just comes down to, like you say about the humor. The humor has to be the same for them all because it is written the whole way throughout, and it's too short a book, I think, to mix it up. So the jokes about them, the kidnapping Kerensky without his pants, and then getting his doppelganger and taking his pants as well. I mean, I thought that was really funny because we need you to talk. But why do you need my pants to make me talk? Just go with it, It's, it's my type of humor as well. I suppose is probably the better way to put it.
Oh yeah. No, it's humorous.
I thought the whole pants thing was really clever, because why bother with ropes and stuff when they just won't go out if you take away their pants?
Oh,
that's funny.
And the fact that he was snapped and put on a gossip website as well, just from the moment when he's run outside, is just so good.
Yeah.
For me, it works
a lot of
better
funny stuff
when
like
I'm.
that. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
There was a lot of funny stuff like that in situational comedy, like funny stuff like that. Yeah.
I was saying for me, it works better when I imagine everything as a pulp 70s sci-fi low budget movie.
Yeah,
it makes everything way more funny, I think, and gives, I don't know, that's how I imagine everything, right?
Like everything you ever read, or just this book?
Everything I ever read, yeah. The Second Apocalypse, the Lord of the Rings, everything. It just but a crappy 70s fancy movie like what was it? The Warrior Princess. What's her name?
Xena.
What's her name?
Oh, Xena.
Xena, yeah. Exactly.
No,
it would be terrible. But I guess, like, based on what Steve was saying, I was thinking, like, humor is very subjective, and something that lands with someone could completely not land with someone else, and it's then there's nothing of value saved, sort of. Well, I guess other stuff, it feels easier to, even if you don't like tragedy or thriller or whatever, you might still like part of it. It doesn't just not land, I guess. Maybe horror, but I don't know. But humor is very, if it doesn't land, it doesn't land. So I can see why, if you don't like the type of humor, Steve, it wouldn't grab you at all.
And I think it's also interesting that Scalzi's one of those authors that people either really like and will just read everything that he ever writes because that maybe that style of humor runs currently through it. It's not a heavy read, or people just don't like a style at all. It's just very much a binary thing. You're either in or you're out. Because even in the other Scalzi books that I've read, there's a lightheartedness to that as well. That's almost poking fun at, like the Old Man's War pokes fun at the Forever War by Joe Haldeman. You know, that's pretty much the whole setup for that as well. So it is this kind of in joke science fiction stuff.
I guess even in, I don't know, there were some interesting parts, even like without the humor, like that last part about, you know, bringing the doppelganger and switching places and all that sort of stuff. That made my brain confused a bit. I was like, how is this gonna work? What sort of rules are we following to make this work? But like in the end, I was thinking about it. It's actually like kind of clever solution.
Yeah.
To whatever we're trying, and that's kind of like actual sci-fi in a sense, right? It's like an interesting twist on how the rules work or whatever that you didn't predict before. But you're like, okay.
But isn't it funny how, again, they make fun of that whole thing, even with them going through the wormhole with Kerensky and that kind of stuff. They sort of make fun of that by basically blaming it all when they get to meet the writer at the end. And well, you wrote this. It wasn't me who wrote this, that this was even possible.
Yeah.
You know, what about the 6-day rule? It's just, who would write something like that? I don't know. It was just an idea for one episode that we needed to do, you know, and they kind of make fun of it. So it means that when you get ridiculous, and you're right, Dan, I had the same problem about, does that actually work? But then you have to remember that these are real life characters going back in time to meet their actors who look identically like them. Like, the whole thing's preposterous to start off with. But again, that's the whole premise, I think, of the book, is that it's kind of just making fun of the whole thing.
That is an interesting commentary, though. Like, when it comes to the 6-day rule, it's like when a writer puts something out there, they can't later contradict it, even if they didn't like what they actually put out there. So you have to kind of, if you're doing a series, you kind of got to play by that rule that you might not even like later on.
But I think it's hilarious because this is supposed to be science fiction based in science, but all the science fiction shows have these kind of in-universe rules that once they're presented, people just have to accept as real. Otherwise, people get very, very angry. Nerds be angry at that inconsistencies.
You mean like midichlorians?
Yes, indeed.
Or a Millennium Falcon with a parsecs, and then you keep trying to write more and more stuff outside to try to justify it. And then it becomes even more ridiculous. Yeah,
exactly
that
same
feeling.
Even though it's science.
Hilarious.
There was this thing that, like, some shows that really annoy me because there's this one guy who seems to know all the answers, and you have no idea how they came up with the answers, and he's always right. So Jenkins is that guy in this book, except he's basing it on some valid information. Like, I had that moment, like, how the hell do you know all these things? Especially when he said, oh, you're creating a new timeline, and you have you have the 6-day rule and whatnot, but he's basing it on the past and what happened. So he's just like, did you see what the writers did? And so I thought that was also pretty clever because, you know, like, he's that guy who knows everything, but he's basing it on some information. But he's also like those guys who annoyingly are never wrong. Cisco and Flash comes to mind.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Like when he tells he tells them that the ship can do loop-de-loops and nobody would ever lose their footing, but as soon as a dramatic moment happens, everybody can't stand up anymore. I was cracking up when I read that. Because that's what you see on the Star Trek show whenever they get hit. You see the whole thing shake. It's just a camera shaking, but they're all acting.
Didn't he say something like, if they moved the inertial dampeners closer to the bridge or something, that none of it would happen,
Yeah.
And then there are specific rooms that take all the damage because that's where the cameras are.
Deck 6 to 12.
6 to 12.
Oh, God.
Oh, man.
I wonder if Steve did start a Star Trek watch-a-thon, and as it went on, then he got through 2-3 series, he'd be going, this Redshirts book is one of my favorite books of all time now.
Maybe. It from an outsider's perspective, it does feel like an inside joke that I'm just not privy to. It's kind of what it is. Sometimes like, this should land a certain way, and it's just not.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
The whole thing is predicated on knowledge of the types of things that happen all the time, and in that show specifically. It even refers to it by name.
Yeah.
I felt
it's still funny, though.
Yeah. But even if I didn't see it, I've still seen enough clips of Star Trek online that I've seen like clips of what you're describing, like the things shaking and then people pretending to move. I've seen the clip of stabilized camera and then showing people pretending to fall around. It looks really funny. I don't know. It feels like most of these things are like permeated into the common knowledge of people that spend all their time on the internet, sort of.
Nerd culture.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Goddamn nerds.
Yeah, and that was something that was something that Star Trek was perpetuated basically with its cult followings and stuff like that kept growing and growing.
It is funny seeing a book like this being written. I think it's 2012, something like that. Just think a book like this would have, the likelihood of it being as popular as it was in the 80s or 90s is pretty slim. I think there was a big shift to quote unquote nerd culture and that sort of thing. It's like, it's kind of like it's no longer the counterculture. It's like cool or fun.
Yeah,
which is good.
You're right. Yeah, that's a good point. It would not have been successful in the late 80s and the early 90s. It definitely required the amount of time to go by to have a deep nostalgia for these things to be present, and that's what makes the book work for what it is. Yeah.
For me, it didn't feel like a 2010 book, though. It felt older to me. I don't know, because I guess it just calls back to the nostalgia of those years. But it didn't feel like a modern book to me, I guess. If I had to guess before knowing the date, I would have thought it was like late 90s. That's what I would have thought.
Oh wow.
Really?
But, I don't know, 'cause the writing style didn't seem to me that modern, but maybe I'm just biased by thinking of the TV show, I guess, that he's trying to emulate.
I love Kerensky did have his own character, which was great because he wasn't an extra. He was an actual character on the show, and I thought that was hilarious when he says that he assigned somebody to a mission specifically so that the guy could have one more away experience, a last hurrah. and he said the guy tried to beg it off, but he insisted that the guy go. And Dahl says to him, "Well, that was deeply malicious of you." And he's like, "Oh, thank you." and because he has no idea what malicious means, right? And so there was just, if you like humor like that with those lines, those type of lines, then you're probably gonna like this book. It's full of them. It's chock full of them.
Does he also say that, like, oh yeah, he was gonna spend his time with his wife, and he was almost gonna retire? He says something he says all those things, right?
The whole sob story, and of course the guy died.
So unlucky.
So unlucky.
Yeah.
There was this one moment when what Weinstein, who's the
Yes, the
writer.
writer.
Yeah, they ask him to write in the fact that there would be two of Hester. He says, "I could, yes. It would be messy and nonsensical." This is a problem for you, Hester asked. Like everything else you've done is in messy and nonsensical.
Yeah, that's it. I also really liked the box that Jenkins sent to his wife. That was a cool moment. Like, there's lots of little cool moments. There obviously there's no real playing, I think, on the fabric of the novel at all, but it is just that nice little bit that when somebody arrives at yours, they can't even really explain it. They're just like, this is a picture, and just like, but I've never taken this picture. Like, you can see the process in her head to just go with it, but she comes back with a tear in her eye, and then then they realize that in 6 days it'll all destroy and disappear. Love it.
Yeah. I loved when they sort of heckled the writer when they met him. Like, did they teach science in school? Just asking. Yeah, I went to Occidental where they had a lot of good science courses. And Duas, like, did you go to any?
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like that when you're watching a show and you're like, this makes absolutely no sense, right? Or even it's like the same when you're watching. I feel the same when I'm watching a historical movie, and it's like, this is completely wrong. But I also heard interviews of those people, like the writers, talking about why they make these decisions, and like them talking with the historians or with the I don't know, physicists or whatever, scientists. And it's like, a lot of the time it's like, okay, I understand why you did it. It's, it's kind of hard. There's a lot of rules in how to write a TV show or write a movie or whatever, but it's hard to fit real stuff sometimes while also keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
So,
And writing's hard. So, it really is.
Well, I'd say especially in serialized shows like that. You've got 24, 25 episodes in an old network TV series per season, and you've just got to create drama every time. And like, he spoke to Dwayne Worrell, who wrote for Far Country. We did the interview, and he was saying, like, and within that 45-minute structure, you've got to write cliffhangers for every ad break. You've got to do that the whole way through. There is a formula to it, but to do write that every week, even within a writer's room, and be different and novel enough every week to keep people coming back. Like, it must be so difficult.
Trying to keep it interesting, but also still within the formula. It's like, it feels pretty hard.
Yeah. Very, very difficult. So
that's why a lot of episodes in these serial TV shows are not good, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You can't write a good episode all the time, especially if it's very long.
Unless you're Star Trek. Yeah, I hear
you. I'm pretty sure even Star Trek fans don't like every episode.
Every episode, great.
Sure. Good for you.
What's that flavor of Kool-Aid you're drinking there, Chris?
Pepsi. Yeah. There are standard episodes for sure, but it gets to a certain point that you kind of buy into the craziness and wackiness and watch it regardless, don't you? It's kind of one of those things. But it is that thing that happens in TV, even writing with the evolution of TV. So I probably told this story before, but it's the idea that there's been so many crime shows of different various ways. So CSI, there's like 1 million episodes of CSI, so everybody knows how forensic works now. There was Lie to Me, so you can read body language. There was Criminal Minds, so you could work out the kind of background of somebody that commit a crime. So when you see a TV series and they reveal the killer and you go, no, didn't have the right profile to commit that type of murder, you turn the TV off and angrily because now you know too much. It's the same kind of thing you get with science fiction TV shows when the science doesn't work and you're like, no, this is just pure nonsense. Somebody made this shit up, as if you didn't know that before you started watching.
It's a difference between like the bad science, which you don't notice, and the bad science which brings you out of a show, right?
Like
And
atoms
usually if
disappearing
it-
in 6 days.
yeah. And usually I feel it's like if the story is not good, like and it's not catching, then you start noticing all the bad signs more because
That's
you're
right.
like, well, I'm bored. You start thinking about all the little details, which you wouldn't usually notice if it's just a good story.
That's right. Don't know what else you can really say about it.
Yeah. Is
think, that's
Hester the
why-
millionaire guy? Or I think I confused myself between Hester and Hansen.
Mr. a millionaire, I think. Isn't it?
Um,
Is he not?
Ah.
I thought he
No.
was, but then he had this whole identity crisis where he's like, I'm not important, I don't have a backstory, I'm just
Jasper,
here.
you mean?
Jasper.
No, well, that's Dal. Or no, sorry, that's Hester. Yeah,
Yeah,
Jasper's
Hester.
Hester, yeah.
Okay.
So Hansen is the other guy. Oh,
Nice.
and that was convenient too, right? He's like, oh, I just had that burrito. I need to go to the restroom so I can have this dramatic moment.
I was wondering where they were going with that. I was like, well, what the hell?
But yeah, I think I agree. We're kind of all talked out on this one. Pretty.
Yeah, Hansen's the rich guy's son.
Okay.
Okay.
Hansen.
Okay. I had them mixed up.
So where do we expect it to go then?
Where do
So
we ended actually in a cliffhanger.
We ended up with them coming back, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Back to the Future.
So where is
gonna-
this black hole
yeah.
near Earth that they're pointing at for time travel?
Well, because they're on a TV show, they can be anywhere.
Well, if you just look up in the sky to the right,
Yeah. Beside Neverland, second star to the right.
right.
All right. Yeah. So did they talk
Predictions.
about?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, did they talk about how they're gonna bring the other Hester back, or are they just now Hester and have they just been personality swapped and that's it for them?
No, their Hester stayed behind in 2012, and they took the son with
Right.
them. But they reckon if it all works out and they put him in and they cure him, that they should automatically switch and revert. I
Interesting.
I didn't understand that bit at all. But you could just go with it. It's fine.
Okay, we'll go with it. So Dan was asking predictions, I think.
Well, I was gonna say I predict that the ending of a book is gonna be another layer of meta in which, like, the book is a TV show, and this whole time traveling whole thing was like a TV show in itself. So it's like another layer of TV show.
Interesting.
That's how I'm gonna predict.
Oh. Interesting.
Because that's
So
why
he's going to say,
that's why there's all these things like the burrito and whatever, all these things which make sense in a TV show but are outside the narrative.
Yeah.
so basically it's going to end with cut. That's a wrap.
Something like that. Or maybe it's gonna be like a little bit of something happening. Someone goes out, outside of a TV show or something. I don't know, but that's what I'm gonna predict. That there's an extra layer of TV show.
Well, maybe Vasha read the last page and can tell us.
Yeah, please do.
No.
She actually didn't. This time she didn't.
She didn't?
Varsha is growing. Oh, or hadn't enough time. I'm not sure which, but let's go for growing.
Maybe. Or yeah, okay, she's growing. I'll take that.
Dear. But we come back and there's a shootout happening on the Intrepid, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because I was sort of thinking they didn't actually go do the mission they were sent out to do, which was do the interpreting of the dialects and all of that kind of stuff. So maybe it's all went to hell.
Oh yeah, maybe it's I mean the mission. I mean, I think they actually did better with their mission by actually convincing the writer that they're real and you need to treat us a little better. And so I think maybe we don't know what the shootout is yet, but maybe it's in a little, I don't know, uprising of the extras. I don't know.
It's gonna be like
or maybe some
yeah,
sort
the
of
writer back in our time writes, oh, okay, all that thing that happened, it doesn't matter. It all resolved itself. Oh, now there's this guy they need to cure. And that's the episode. So all the other stuff is gonna be like nothing because it's
Right.
not relevant to what they need to do right now.
yeah.
It also really bothers me that even though they've just done time travel, sorry, they get to come back and they don't arrive back at a time that they could do anything they want. A natural amount of time has passed by the time they come back. Like they could have literally traveled to 5 minutes after they left, done the other mission and otherwise, but no, that's not what's happened. Or maybe it's just a butterfly effect. Maybe that's what we've got.
Well, it's not also time travel. It's also different dimension, right?
Parallel, yeah.
I don't know how that interacts.
black hole.
I await your explanation of exactly what difference that made, Dan. Thanks.
Well, sometimes there's that trope that you go to a different dimension and like time is way longer or way shorter, right? So that's how only 5 minutes passed in our own time. Maybe that's what happened, but I don't know how it fits with time travel.
We're back in Southern Reach, okay?
The imaginary black hole effect.
Yeah. It's not imaginary, it's right there.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I like that there was a specific place in the black hole that they had to target, like between the Schwarzschild radius and the accretion disk.
Genius.
Those are terms the writer made up, right? Yeah.
Well, accretion disk is real. What was the other term?
Both
They're
are
both
real.
real, right?
Schwarzschild radius.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I think the point of no return, if I remember correctly. But
Yeah.
But yeah, they had to aim between. But like, where's the damn black hole in the first place?
What's the other famous movie that that they go into a black hole? And wait, Interstellar? Is Interstellar they go in a black hole? No. Which is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's what I was thinking. But they don't get spaghettified in that one either. Well, stuff happens, I guess.
No. Well,
Sort
Stuff
of.
happens. I was going to say
Yeah.
Interstellar,
I
yeah.
guess stuff does happen.
Yeah. Gateway is another one.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, it's a
It's a
book.
I didn't see that book either.
Frederick book. Yeah, I don't have predictions, honestly. I don't know where this will go, but I'm here for the ride.
Yeah.
The humor, I don't know what constitutes slapstick humor, but it's a lot less language-based and more situation-based, I think. So it's technically not my style, but I still enjoy it quite a lot.
Yeah. Slapstick physical type of humor when visually just makes me roll my eyes, but
Okay.
it seems to work in written form a little bit like the bit below pants. But again, in that case it is physical, but it's also literary. Like it's the play on the fact that he's got no pants on literally. Again, that makes it funny.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Steve, is there anything that would save this book for you? That would make it interesting if it happened?
They all die.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. If they all die.
The ones in 2012, the ones in the TV show, they all die. Yeah.
If they all die.
Because they fucked it up so much.
Oh yeah, there's a
really what I was gonna
the
say.
trailer crashes, the bus
Predictable.
bringing all of them crashes in the real world. And so yeah, that could happen.
I do think Dan's right. I think it's going to double down and be extra meta and do something like that, which if you're going to do it, then I guess go all the way, right? So.
I'm still waiting for the sections of this book that warrant the book winning a Hugo Award.
I like that.
Because I'm hoping that it's ending spectacular, and that's why it got that acclaim. Because otherwise, if the average is just ending, or the ending is just average, I should say, then for me the book is kind of forgettable, and another year from now, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I think I read something called Redshirts, but it's not going to really stick with me unless it's something really special that's going to happen towards the end of the
Well,
book.
I think I've got some inclination that something's about to happen because technically there are only 18 pages left in the book.
Okay.
Wow.
I don't know what it means.
Vasha told me to read
If it-
100, so I don't know what you're saying.
If anybody wants to flick forward 18 pages, I haven't read
I'm
it.
not gonna
I
do
just
it.
if you want that kind of, there are technically only 18 pages left in this book, and then there's another
Barsha.
80 odd pages after that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna look at it.
Okay.
There's 2 hours left in the audiobook.
Yeah, no, there's definitely content there.
Oh, I
content.
see. I see. Yeah, there is a total of about half an hour left in the audiobook.
To your
If you add
Okay.
in
your point about
yeah.
I'll be quiet.
I don't know, like it winning a Hugo Award, right?
Yeah.
How, like, I'm trying to think, what would a comedy book, I guess, sort of slap this comedy book, what would it have to do for you to say, okay, this feels like it's a Hugo Award winning book? You know what I mean? Because comedy is always so hard for
Mhm.
comedy to win something. But like, is it just a bias, or
agree.
what would the
Yeah.
comedy have to do
Well,
to
that-
be able to people say, oh, it's
Yeah.
very good?
I don't know. Does comedy have its own category
No.
in the Hugo Awards?
No.
Or did it win for being a sci-fi or whatever? I don't know what the categories are for Hugo
So
Awards.
the categories are basically for the way that they're written most of the time. So it's novel, novelette, novella, short story. Those are the Hugo categories.
Oh, okay.
So length.
I mean, I'd have to know that their criteria is specifically, but I would think it would be something that would have a very profound effect on the reader that delves deep into the human condition,
Yeah.
and that's that this is an amusing turn about some quirks of the sci-fi filmmaking, side of production, but I'm not seeing anything that where it would garner this kind of recognition that I've always assumed Hugo Award-winning novels have.
Yes. But I don't know. I'm thinking,
So,
like, try to think of the Oscars, for example, right? Comedy never wins
Mhm.
Oscars,
No.
right? But
rarely it does sometimes. But
sort of, I guess. But like slapstick
I
comedy,
can't think of one.
slapstick comedy doesn't, right? For sure. And certain types of comedy don't do it. And is that just something inherent with comedy that it's just not? I don't know. It doesn't reflect the human condition. It's not serious enough. It's not deep enough.
See,
I don't know.
it depends on what. Yeah, it depends on what you mean by comedy, because technically Tootsie's a comedy.
Yes.
In that one, and there have been other movies like that.
Yeah.
That were technically comedies, but they had a lot of the background of drama to them, and they really said something about the times they were made, or about people, and through the comedy. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering is this going to do the same for me?
Yeah.
It hasn't yet, but is it going to by the time it ends?
Those comedies nearly exclusively are political satires of some way that do well in movie terms, best in show, that kind of stuff.
Best in show, yeah, right.
This has to do something that's clever. I think it's not enough just to make fun of the TV show Star Trek. I think you have to point a finger at literary sci-fi as well. I think you need to do something about how it's written and how it's been played out over the years as well. Because I think if you just keep on, if the whole thing just points the finger at Star Trek, it's of limited value, because then all you're left with are the bits that we've seen so far, which is, the rocking of the ship. I mean, it's clever, but it's not mind-altering. It's sort of tittersome and funny without actually being profound, and you need it to be profound to be memorable.
I'm arguing that you don't need to, and that just are biased. And I think if something is funny and it makes me laugh and it's enjoyable, it should have just as much value as something that is profound, because something that's profound and it's drama, that's what it's trying to do, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, comedy is trying to make me laugh and make me enjoy my time. It's not trying to make me reflect on society unless it's satire. But if it's a comedy made to just make me have fun, it's just a sci-fi show. It's not meant to be, super serious. Then I would argue that if it does that, for me, it's a very good book.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. After copious amounts of research, I looked up the nominations or the other nominees for Best Novel that year.
Yeah.
The other ones were Captain Varpatil's Alliance, 2312, Throne of the Crescent Moon, and Blackout.
Yeah. So Kim Stanley Robinson, Lewis McMaster Bujold, and then Mir Grant and Saladin Ahmed. Interestingly, the winning novels from the following years is some of the biggest heavy hitters of science fiction writing. So Anne Leckie's Ancillary Justice won the year after that. Three Body Problem won the year after that. Then Fifth Season and The Obelisk Case by N.K. Jemisin the next 2 years after that again. But she won 3 years in a row after that. But, some of the biggest novels, I think, in the whole space won in the intervening years afterwards. Like none of those other books that Steve's mentioned there are ones that I've even seen on shelves. Although, to be fair, I've never really seen Redshirts on a bookshelf much either. To be fair,
Yeah. But it could be something like Legends and Lattes was a couple of years ago, where it just hits at the right time and it's good at what it does, and people need a kind of a palate cleanser, and it just works, and it
struck that nerve.
Yeah.
It's definitely worked as a palate cleanser for me. Yeah, between, especially as a companion to 1984, for instance, it couldn't it couldn't be better placed as a companion novel to that, I think.
Oh shit!
What a great book! Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But what a great book!
Yeah. So
everybody must die in the end. even
Steve
the
to be
one guy
happy.
who maybe could have died. Even the one guy who maybe could have died isn't going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see how this goes.
It'd be fun.
I figured out what Chris meant with extreme research, like Steve does. I looked at the index table of contents of the book. Cool. Then are we ready to move on to the short story?
Yeah.
I'm ready to move on to a different place because I have a long bus ride to take. So
different dimensions.
I thought you were going to 2012.
No. Was it a good time? What was I doing in 2012? No, I was in university. Fuck that time.
Well, imagine the fun you could have messing about with people in the idea of COVID in 7 years' time. Like the fun you could have if
Nobody
you
would
did go
believe
back.
me.
It would be
No,
impossible.
I would just buy Bitcoin or something. Oh, I don't remember 2012 what the price was, but I think it was low. Buying 2012 and selling 2020 or something when it was peak. I would have to do something like that. Or just buy the usual Amazon. Amazon was big at the time. Not as big as now.
No, the one I heard the other day, and was probably from Marcus Brownlee, I think he'd said something, if you had actually spent the money that you've spent on iPhones every year and bought Apple stock with the money that you spent on the iPhone instead, you'd be worth something like £50 million.
That's how much
rather than
iPhones
buying the phone
you
itself,
buy.
yeah.
I guess.
Every iteration, because a lot of people do upgrade them every year. If you'd have just taken the money every year and just put it in Apple stock as it came out, you'd be worth about 50 million.
For sure. Well, I guess I didn't have much money in university. Now that I think about it, it's invest.
Enough to put on a Bitcoin, surely.
Yeah, maybe I could have afforded a Bitcoin, I guess. I don't remember what it was in 2012. Probably. Yeah, that's probably the best idea. Anyways, I'm not doing that. I'm just leaving. Bye.
Oh, dear.
All right. So does the president of the sewing club want to kick us off, or does the sociology intern want to go first about the snowball effect?
Yeah. I gotta say, this was the most direct first sentence theme statement I've seen yet. What is sociology good for? Basically, that's the whole story. What's it good for? And that's pretty much the theme of the story. And yeah, she doesn't waste any time getting right into that. It was an okay story. Wasn't much science fiction-y really. Then it was just kind of an experiment they did, and it went a little wild, and you don't really get the end, like, you know, the ending is kind of left up in the air. You know, what happens then, basically. That's how it ends. And
Welcome to the first female president of the world, Mrs. Greaves.
World domination from a sociological mathematical formula.
Who started out as the president of the sewing club? Well, was she the president? Was that her title?
No, I just want to be the person that just wanted to be in the sewing club. Like, there must have been people who wanted to just be in the sewing club, and then when I started taking all the forms, they're like, I don't want to do any of this. I just want to sew.
Does this remind you a bit about Foundation by Asimov? I read the book a long time ago, but doesn't he do something similar where he predicts how society will go through math, and he has, I don't know, a whole calculus that predicts how human society will look several centuries or millennia later?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. Harry Seldon, his psychohistory, I think isn't that what they call it? Where he basically uses maths to predict when things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like how he she said that through the professors that this mathematical formula he came up with explained the growth of the Catholic Church and the Roman Empire and the spread of the smoking habit, and which of course at the time this was written was going in full swing. And so the I like how that she brought all that stuff into it as a sort of explanation of how it's going to end here. And because they're the ones who set in motion the sewing club incident, I think it was a case of they struck lightning in the bottle with the person that they explained this Constitution, they gave the Constitution to. And I don't know if they realized how she was going to run with that and turn it into a what it became. So, but it was cool that as part of the story they brought up these things that fit the equation that the professor came up with as their examples.
It was also interesting that the UN was one of the examples of organizations that failed for various reasons, and then this organization that they started essentially would grow and become more powerful than the UN, apparently. I don't know, I had a bit of difficulty buying into it though, because it felt like a pyramid scheme, and we know those aren't successful at all. So, but I guess there's a hypothetical motivation to join. And there's also the fact that, okay, all the women first, and now maybe they'll start pulling in men too, and everybody in the world. You're finding common cause, essentially saying everybody is the same somehow, which is both true and not, like the thing that motivates them. So yeah, I guess they're doing that by absorbing all the organizations. They are both religious and they're secular. They're both for civil welfare and for like whatever business organizations and so on. So
Mhm.
yeah, I guess it takes a lot of mind warping. Maybe a sociologist can help explain it better.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, they did say that it's going to have a snowball effect where it all breaks apart eventually. What surprised them is that it kept going. Uh,
Well, the limiting factors that they thought as part of the initial experiment that would limit the size of it, i.e., how many women can sew within that little place, then how many residents in that little place, and then it goes, but they just opened an office in New York. And it's like, oh. So the variables that his formula, whatever it is, had set aside didn't include enough scope and reasoning for it. So it is that kind of thing of that at the end of the story is basically the people that had created it and were going to celebrate in success. It got so out of hand that they had to disavow all knowledge of it being involved with it in the first place. So it was like, I've never heard of that place. That was not me. It's politics in a nutshell. That wasn't my fault. I didn't say anything or do anything that would have made people do that. Welcome to last week in the UK.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a very chilling line. It felt a bit like the Children of Ruin. We are going on an adventure line when she says, "Oh, they've opened a branch in New York."
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whatever the cause, but it's growing infinitely.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think, Steve?
Well, that was a clever story. I enjoyed it. I did see that it's compared a lot to one of Asimov's stories, and I was trying to find the story called Laughing Space.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's included in Laughing Space. It's an anthology. I'm sorry. I thought I was comparing it to one of his stories, but I thought because you mentioned Foundation. But yeah, I saw the equations, and I knew that you would like it. So no, I thought it was a fun story. I'd like how it just gets out of control, and yeah, I thought it was nice and tight and short. And I think my only complaint was that sometimes the idea in a story is more interesting than the story itself. It's hard to you kind of have an idea and then you build a story around it, and sometimes the characters within the story aren't as interesting as the idea that they're exploring. But that's pretty common, I think, for science fiction.
Yeah, that tends to be the case. I think I've realized. And I like science fiction a lot more for ideas than
Yeah.
the story or the people, I guess. And it's always a bonus when those are
Yeah.
nice too.
Well, maybe we can apply this equation to page joy.
Yes. I mean, you can. This is basically Hotel California. You can come in, but you can never leave.
That would have been funnier if one of us three males had said that about Varsha, because that's how it feels. The evil emperor, the evil overlord.
You can never leave.
No.
Yeah, we need more. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say we were talking about sometimes the characters in the story isn't as interesting as the idea in science fiction, but I think it makes me appreciate things like The Expanse even more because of what they're able to do with the characters, and the story and the characters are really strong along with the idea. So it's it makes you appreciate certain stories more when you kind of dive deeper into the genre.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does make me. I have this ongoing, I say argument. It's kind of a mock argument with all the social scientists that I work with who tell me that they are scientists, and I'm like, psychology though and sociology, not really science though, is it? And they go, I have a bachelor's of science and a degree, and I go, I know, but like not really. And yet here we have not only a short story on social science, but I would argue that, again, to bring it up, 1984 is a sociological study rather than a scientific study, and it's a very prominent science fiction novel, so I'll just have to remove those from the argument. If anybody brings them up, be prepared for them.
Are you rigging the argument, Chris?
I'm going to rig the argument, is exactly right. By knowing what the questions are going to be and what the arguments are going to be, I'm going to be able to prepare an answer.
Mm-hmm. Much like
well,
the people in the
I'll have
story.
to,
It's like the people, yes, exactly right.
I'll have to disagree with you since I'm the sociology intern.
Yes. Intern being the qualified word.
Yeah, well, yeah. You gotta start somewhere, right?
Shots fired.
Yeah, muted Fasha.
Sorry. I was saying, how long has this club been around? I don't know. I just joined 2 days ago. I thought that was hilarious. She's got all this passion and she's jumping up and down. It's like 2 days ago. I joined 2 days ago. Yeah, political parties. She also mentions the stock market at some point, that the bubble builds up and then it gets too big for its own good and then bursts. But anyway, it was an interesting story, and it was a bit mind-bending in the way some physics-based science fiction is, I think, for me. Anyway, fun story overall.
Yeah, it was fun. I like it.
Any other points about this or Redshirts before we wrap up? No. Okay, in that case, we will see everyone next week with a story called Trot, if I'm not mistaken, and the last of Redshirts in about a week. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye.